The Innocenzo Gasparini Institute for Economic Research is an international community of scholars who share a mission to inspire, nurture and disseminate rigorous, empirical and theoretical research across all fields of economics. We are around 100 affiliated researchers coming from all over the world. Today, we are here to celebrate the 35 years of IGIER. And we're going to go back to the ideas and energy that sparked IGIER's creation and how this initial vision continues to shape the work that we do. I'm Alexia Delfino, I'm a proud IGIER affiliate, and I have the honor today of being here with Professor Mario Monti and Professor Francesco Giavazzi, who are both remarkable examples of how economic science can be a force for change, and who in 1990 founded IGIER. We're also here with Thomas de Barbachon, Professor of Economics, who's the current director of IGIER, and he's going to tell us a bit about the future vision of the center. Thank you all for being here. Professor Monti, let's start from the beginning. 35 years ago, you were director of Bocconi. What sparked the idea of IGIER, and what were you imagining for the center?
Well, I cannot claim that the idea of IGIER was mine. For me, the decision to set up IGIER was a byproduct of a even more ambitious target that I had in mind, namely to have Professor Francesco Giavazzi come to Bocconi as full professor of economics, because I was convinced, I was sure that that would be an enormous added value for Bocconi to become a center of excellence in economics globally. But it was not so easy to recruit Professor Giavazzi. In fact, I had to overcome two serious obstacles.
Can you tell us a little bit more about these obstacles?
I was rector, yes, but I had to convince my colleagues on the faculty that it was crucial to hire Professor Giavazzi, who was highly respected. But you know, in any faculty there are different styles, traditions, and not everybody wanted to be exposed to such an exogenous, probably disturbing element of progress. But then they were convinced. But that proved the smaller of the two obstacles, because the second one is that I needed to persuade Professor Giavazzi to accept. And that was a tough one, because he would not come for free. Many people who dream to be hired at Bocconi, maybe he did not disdain that, but he would definitely not come for free, because he wanted a brand new structure created at Bocconi under his control, and if possible, ring-fenced from the rest of the decision-making process of the university as far as faculty recruiting and management. And so he was asking, very wisely in retrospect, the rector of Bocconi to tie Bocconi hands in the future decisions concerning this new gem, IGIER. And in order to make sure that Bocconi would not let its sometimes more traditional habits spoil the new game, he convinced, and I was fully on board with him, NBR and CPR to co-own, basically, and to co-decide this new thing with us. And we decided to name the new entity to the memory of Innocenzo Gasparini, a great professor of ours, and the European Commission put up some financing. I must say, it was quite an exhausting effort, but it did pay off largely.
Great, thank you so much. And maybe as you were talking about obstacles, I've heard that IGIER wasn't originally located in the center of Milan, actually in a very different setting quite monastic, I would say, in the Mirasole Abbey. And I haven't been yet, but I heard it's a beautiful 13th century structure. But it's nearly like an hour away by public transport from the Bocconi campus.
But that was also an expression, I think, if I can interpret that exposed, of the considerable aesthetical approach to doing economics very, very seriously, and also perhaps the slightly elitist will not to be too easily mixed up with the rest of Bocconi.
I see. So there was a plan behind this location choice. Professor Giavazzi, as we're talking about what was the vision of IGIER that you had, in the late 1980s, it must have been quite visionary to think about an institute like IGIER. What do you think made it unique and also successful over time?
Many things, Alexia. One thing that, looking back, I think was important, that IGIER always tried to be open, intellectually open, which was not guaranteed because most of the first fellows of IGIER were US-trained economists, so they were coming back from the US. But I think we always tried, I think successfully, to be very open. And the first signal of this came actually from Mario, because we had to appoint a select committee, because at the beginning we had fellowships, 2-year-long fellowship for people who would come back to Europe from any country. And we needed a committee to choose these people. And I had in mind one person who was an economist to whom I was very close at the time, was Stan Fisher, who passed away recently, who was then at MIT. And Mario said, Fisher is perfect, but we're going to balance Stan Fisher with someone very different. And he proposed, wisely I think, an Italian economist of an older generation who is probably in the spectrum of economics, at least of the time, at the extreme left. Augusto Graziani, who was a professor in Rome, and he had very different views. But the interesting thing is that Augusto Graziani and Stan Fisher would come to the meeting to choose the fellows, and I was the secretary of the meeting. And I asked them, could you, not to be surprised, could you give me your list of priorities? And I looked at them, and very rarely they were not overlapping, although they came from different. And this, I think, was important because they both appreciated the fact of having an open-minded set of people. And a proof of this is that probably the two areas where IGIER has been more successful in terms of research have been development with Eliana La Ferrara. It was a very strong, probably at the time, one of the strongest groups in development in Europe, and political economy with Alberto Lesina and Guido Tabellini. They were not the core of Bocconi before IGIER. So being open-minded, I think, has been a very smart idea.
Fantastic. So looking back, it seems that IGIER also became a kind of a blueprint for other initiatives. So now you can build a vibrant community, how you can engage with policymakers and also mentor students. So are there, Professor Monti, other initiatives that you think IGIER inspired? And what you think are the ingredients that are portable to other settings from the IGIER model?
Well, I should stress also that the openness, diversity, and not replicating certain features of Bocconi that IGIER brought to us was something that since the very beginning also reflected positively on the overall image of Bocconi. Then I will mention two things of my later years. One, when I was in Brussels after 10 years as European Commissioner, and I was asked by an also very brilliant economist, Jean Pisani-Ferry, and by a German colleague of his, to chair a new think tank with the name Bruegel, which I invented. Many features were in common, and that was at the European level, whereas IGIER was more at an Italian but then global level. Two similar inspirations. And if I can make another reference over time, When exactly 20 years after managing the advent of Francesco to Bocconi and the setting up of IGIER, I found myself in front of the problem of setting up a grand coalition of national unity for a new Italian government. The experience with IGIER and Francesco turned out to be useful. That task was relatively easier than the creation of IGIER, but it required more or less similar skills.
Glad that the challenges that Francesco presented helped also the country more broadly. So since joined Bocconi, actually, I noticed in all the interactions with my other colleagues at IGIER, this openness and, really diversity cherished in the collaborations that we have with each other. And so I think really IGIER has its own distinctive culture, if you want, the IGIER spirit. And Professor Giavazzi, can you, tell us about a memory or a, particular moment that you think best captures this IGIER spirit?
I think of a person. The culture of IGIER at the beginning in the 13th century Abbey was difficult to build, and a Swedish economist, Torsten Persson, said, "I have the solution for you. We have a wonderful secretary at the Institute in Stockholm who would like to leave Sweden. She's a bit bored in Sweden. She's the perfect person to start IGIER administratively." She was called Cindy, and she did a wonderful job. So part of the beginning atmosphere of IGIER was thanks to Cindy. Cindy's long gone, but I remember her very vividly.
That's fantastic, and I think the staff of IGIER also embodies all these values in all the.
And then, of course, I cannot avoid recalling a story which is important related to what Mario said at the beginning. How did I come to IGIER, to Bocconi at the beginning? I'm an engineer, so I was reluctant about moving to a place that I thought was soft and not very scientific. And Mario understood this perfectly. Once we were going to Rome for a conference at the Bank of Italy, and we were flying together. We arrived in Rome after a long discussion, sitting nearby on the plane. And as we entered the airport, Mario turned around and said, "I'm going back to Milano." I said, "I have to go to the conference." No, but my purpose today was to talk to you. Now I can go back.
Fantastic. As we're sharing personal stories, I also want to tell you a little bit how I joined IGIER. I came to Bocconi in 2020 in the middle of the COVID-19 pandemic. And so it was a challenging time because changing job starting a new job as assistant professor, starting your academic career and in a new place was hard, especially in that situation. And of course, there was the issue of limited face-to-face interactions, but I think that was, only a part of the challenge, because I think living this really extreme moment of crisis was making me, but I think also a lot of my junior colleagues, really question about how our work as economists could contribute to the challenges that society was facing at that time. And I think joining, the IGIER community really helped us because it was still active, even if online. There were seminars, there were policy discussions, there was mentoring of students. And so it really gave us some meaning and some daily shared purpose that was grounding us and anchoring us to what we were doing. So Thomas, Professor Lebar-Vachon, I have a couple of questions for you, and especially about IGIER today and about the future. When you look at the Institute today, what makes you proudest? And for the future, what you think are the challenges that the affiliates will need to face?
So what makes me proud of IGIER is really the fact that it's a place where research, excellence in research and collaboration come together. Our researchers, they tackle first-rate, ambitious, impactful questions with scientific rigor and creativity. And they are really at the frontier of knowledge, of research. I'm also proud of our staff that help and try to create an environment where we can actually have new ideas emerge and collaborations that can actually happen.
This is the legacy of Cindy.
And then about the challenges, I think there are two main challenges. One is technological change. artificial intelligence, and the other one is trust. Trust in economics and finance as science, and trust in us as researchers, experts that can actually inform citizens. So the technological challenge is probably the most transformative today. So AI is really changing the way we produce research, the way we extract data, analyze data, collect data, the way we brainstorm, the way we explore previous literature, the way how we're gonna model, think about conceptual framework, and then how we're gonna disseminate our research. And there are new tools that are developed now, and we need to be expert users, first users, early adopters of this technology. Maybe we may even need to produce those new tools so that we are really at the frontier, we get the highest returns to be the first users to produce research with those tools and to be at the frontier.
Thank you, Thomas. So from a group of pioneers to an international research community, the IGIER story shows us how research in economics can travel, adapt, and shape the world. Thank you so much for taking us back to the origins and forward to the future.